Greetings, everybody. This is Bill. Welcome. Today we are talking college football, and we have a very special presentation as we proudly present the Color and Pageantry 2022 preseason top 25 and All-America team. Before we get to the list, we should note some goings-on in the game. Traditionalists that we are, while we have a tear in our eye when thinking about the current ever-changing status of the game we hold so dear, college football, we are also extremely excited as within a few short weeks, we will place toe to leather and begin another wild season of NCAA college football. With the NIL now playing a significant role, the transfer portal has made college football somewhat reminiscent of the Wild Wild West, without a sheriff. The NCAA does not have anyone with any kind of authority ready to police the situation, and a statesman in this regard is desperately needed. Now, folks, the run Alabama has been on is historical, something we should all sit back and appreciate. In a rebuilding season, the Crimson Tide played for the national title last year, almost winning it. They did beat eventual national champion Georgia in the SEC championship game in a rebuilding year. The Crimson Tide is our pick to win the national championship in 2022. The Tide houses the best coach in the game and arguably the best players on both sides of the ball, with returning Heisman Trophy winner quarterback Bryce Young and defensive stalwart Will Anderson, who from his linebacker position in our mind is the best defensive player we have seen since Ndamukong Suh. Some of the same old characters are chasing Alabama, most notably Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. We really like Utah as the primary challenger to the Final Four. Is there a dark horse challenger out there that you see? NC State is a veteran team with a talented signal caller and a favorable schedule, and you wonder what kind of damage Southern California can do with new coach Lincoln Riley and a slew of high-talent transfers. So who are the top players that will soon become household names across the country? Let's take a look at the Color and Pageantry All-America team for 2022. On offense, of course, we have a slew of top signal callers. We will include in the description a look at the top quarterbacks we have our eye on this year, but as far as the All-America team, we really focused on 4 signal callers before arriving at our decision. Last year's Heisman winner Bryce Young is back at Alabama and certainly a wonderful player, and we are excited to see Oklahoma transfer Caleb Williams now over at Southern California. But Utah has a stellar dual-threat player in Cameron Rising who we really like. But we think Ohio State's C.J. Stroud is going to be the top quarterback, and boy, howdy does he have some weapons to use at his disposal. Some other offensive players we wanted to note were outstanding center Jarrett Patterson of Notre Dame, a consensus preseason All-America pick. There are some great tight ends out there in the country, with Georgia's Brock Bowers looking very special. While we settled on a first and second team outside of Ohio State's Jackson Smith and Njigba and USC's Jordan Addison, all the rest of the wide receivers are very worthy of consideration and honor. And yes, Xavier, worthy of Texas, is really good. Defensively, it all starts with Alabama's Will Anderson, who from his linebacker position we regard as the nation's best defender, period. There are some great talents out there. We look at Clemson's front with Miles Murphy, defensive end, Nolan Smith from Georgia on the outside linebacker position. Nick Herbig from Wisconsin is in there. Noah Sewell from Oregon. Jack Campbell from Iowa. A lot of great linebackers. The secondary is a strong Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M. You've got Jordan Battle and Jalen Carlton, a pair of strong safeties from Alabama and Arkansas, respectively. And hey, Riley Moss is picking off all kinds of passes over there at Iowa. So a lot of great defensive players we're going to be taking a look at this year. No question about that. Among the specialists, we really want to highlight return specialist Deuce Vaughn of Kansas State. This guy is really special, and Dania Smith of Texas A&M has taken his share of kicks to the house as well. There are some strong place kickers, and we look for more quality punters to emerge. We have always had our eyes on newcomers as true freshmen, but man, with the portal, there are extensive new faces and new places to keep our eyes on. It really will be exciting. Now, folks, before we get on to the top 25, here are our top 6 teams that just fell just outside of that group. First of all, we like Kansas State down here. They are a very dangerous football team. They've got a lot of skill position talent, and we are looking for them to really make some noise in the Big 12 this year. Penn State is another strong team. They've got Sean Clifford back at quarterback. They've got some really talented players, and they could be right there behind Ohio State and Michigan in the Big 10, so we'll keep our eyes on them. Florida State is another team that we think is improved all across the board from the team that went 5-7 a year ago. If they keep Jordan Travis healthy at quarterback with improved offensive line play, they could be very dangerous and maybe going 8-4 in the ACC. UCF is a team that schedule-wise could win them all. They've got a tough game with Louisville at home, but if they get by that, they could be favored in every game. So they could be 11-0, although they're not the caliber of any of the top 10 teams, but they're worth noting there as well. Iowa, again, a very solid football team. They are Iowa. They're just exactly what you expect. They've got excellent linebacker play. They've got a fantastic tight end, and they've got some average quarterback play. But they get things done. They're very tough. Good football team there on the edge of the top 25. And Brigham Young, a team we could have put in the top 15, quite frankly, based on their talent level. But they have a schedule that is just incredibly tough. They've got Notre Dame, they've got Arkansas, they've got Baylor, Boise State, Stanford. They just have a slate that is just too much to bear there. So we've got BYU on the outside looking in, but they are a very tough, talented football team. And then we've got some teams that are looking, right on the edge. We like Mississippi State. That's a strong football team, very much improved. But again, the schedule is just tough. UCLA is one to watch. Florida, with quarterback Anthony Richardson, the sky is the ceiling for him. If he develops as some think he might, they could be very dangerous. LSU is a team to watch as well. We just don't know how that coaching situation is going to go. Minnesota's a good football team. Like what we see from West Virginia, they might be more improved. Boston College has got some great players. Oregon State's pretty good. Maryland looks to have their best team in a couple years. So this is a list with a group of some teams that you might want to look for that could potentially be crashing the top 25. So let's get to the top teams in the land, and we will work our way up to the nation's top team. At 25, we have Wisconsin. It's worth noting that Wisconsin, although they have continued to be a very strong football team, have not won the Big Ten West in 2 seasons. The Badgers are the poster child for plug and play, having done this for decades. But this season, it might be more of a significant challenge. Wisconsin has rarely had outstanding quarterback play, relying, for the most part, on a field general signal caller who efficiently directs the offense, minimizing errors. Now, Graham Mertz returns at quarterback for Wisconsin this fall, but significant improvement is needed as Mertz had an unfavorable touchdown-to-interception ratio last year. We thought Mertz looked great when he first arrived, but things have kind of gone south, and we're not convinced Mertz will noticeably improve. Of course, Wisconsin can rely on their annually punishing running game. Running back Braylon Allen is an All-America player, and he returns. The defense is very talented, housing an All-America candidate at linebacker, but only a handful of starters return. Now, Wisconsin is Wisconsin, but because of the anticipated average quarterback play, we do not see them as powerful as they usually are, and we got Wisconsin going 8-4, possibly even 7-5 this year. At 24, we selected Texas. There are quite a few questions for the Longhorns heading into 2021. With quarterback Casey Thompson off to Nebraska, it seems Hudson Card would be the guy. But Coach Sarkisian has welcomed transfer Quinn Evers from Ohio State. Most think Evers will win the job, but with the verbal commitment of Arch Manning, the number 1 player for the 2022 class and the presumed future starter, we're questioning whether Evers is going to stay now. We will assume he does for this analysis and also assume that he edges out Card for the job. Now, sophomore wide receiver Xavier Worthy is one to watch, an electric All-America candidate. Speaking of All-America candidates, running back Bijan Robinson may be the odds-on favorite for the Doak Walker Award for the Horns. Any quarterback should have plenty of success with these weapons on hand. Defensively, the team is led by weak side linebacker Damavion Overshown, the top tackler in 2021, who's an outstanding player. Now, the Longhorns have some pieces, but would need escalated quarterback play and offensive line play to figure prominently in the Big 12 race. Now, Texas can beat some folks, so we consider them dangerous in the conference, but we think their record is going to end up being probably 7-5. At 23, we have Nebraska. Will Scott Frost save his job by leading the Cornhuskers back to some level of relevance? We think so. Now, Nebraska brought in 2 quarterback transfers, Casey Thompson from Texas and Chubba Purdy from Florida State. Now, most are betting on Thompson here, but improvement in the position, particularly in the area of holding onto the football, seems quite likely. Now, the Huskers have a slew of tremendous running backs, including Gabe Irvin, who's coming off injury, Ramir Johnson, Yaquez Yant, and JUCO phenom Anthony Grant. Talent abounds in the receiving corps, led by LSU transfer Trey Palmer. The offensive line is very much improved. Now, the defense was very strong in 2021 and should be once again. Garrett Nelson is great on the edge, and the team welcomes TCU transfer O'Shawn Mathis, who was a second-team Big 12 performer in 2021. Ty Robinson is a man-child, and he returns inside, as do top tacklers and linebackers Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich, along with talented corner Quentin Newsome. Now, Nebraska should be 3-0 before hosting Oklahoma in a game that presents a golden opportunity. Can Nebraska relive glory and capitalize against the OU team in transition? Odds favor a loss coming at Michigan, but Wisconsin comes to Lincoln before the Huskers close at Iowa. Now, the Big Red have long losing streaks to Iowa and Wisconsin, so odds favor one or both of those ends this year. That should give Nebraska a record of perhaps 8-4, maybe 7-5, but a bowl game and a outside shot at the top 25 exists. We got Wake Forest at 22. The Demon Deacons were pretty doggone good in 2021, and it looks like they will once again field a dangerous and capable football team, especially offensively. It all starts with junior quarterback Sam Hartman, who threw 39 touchdowns while adding 11 on the ground in 2021. Wow! Now, Hartman's poised to have another high-performance season and could well challenge for All-America honors if Wake can pull off a special season, which would include winning the ACC. Don't count them out. 9 starters return on offense, headlined by Hartman, of course, and a tremendous receiving talent in All-America candidate A.T. Terry. Now, he's especially great in the red zone. Now, all of the offensive line returns as well, so that's something to note. Now, on the defensive side of the ball is where Wake is deficient, but the unit did get some timely stops last year, so we look for them to be the same or improved. Well, we got Wake 5-2 before a vastly improved and strong NC State game is on the docket. So for us, Wake's going to be 6-3, hosting North Carolina, a game they can win, and then beating Syracuse at home and Duke on the road. So we got them 9-3, but falling just short of a berth in the ACC championship game. With Pitt losing both quarterback Kenny Pickett and offensive coordinator Mark Whipple, one might expect Pat Narduzzi's squad to take a step back from their ACC championship, but don't expect it. Former Southern California quarterback Keaton Slovis, who is somewhat underachieved, transfers in to try to win the Panther QB job. Even with the puzzling transfer loss of award-winning wide receiver Jordan Addison to Southern Cal, the Panthers bring back 8 offensive starters. The top 3 rushers return, and Pitt has a very strong receiving corps once again. 7 official starters return to the defensive unit, led by disruptive All-America candidate Kalijah Cansey at tackle, who earned first-team All-ACC honors as a freshman last year. Star linebacker Savosia Dennis and sophomore safety Brandon Hill, along with a pair of great corners in Marcus Williams and Eric Hallett, lead the back end of the defensive unit. Now, Pitt won the ACC last year, but we don't think the C's part in such an advantageous way this fall. So we got Pitt 8-4 based on Slovis having a pretty good season at quarterback. We have the Kentucky Wildcats as the number 20 team in the land. Now, you really have to appreciate the job Mark Stoops has done at Kentucky, where he has guided the Cats to a pair of 10-win seasons within the past 5 years. Last year's squad was quite strong, beating Iowa in the Florida Citrus Bowl in beautiful downtown Orlando. Now, the main takeaway is the roster is strong and Kentucky's not going anywhere, well positioned to compete in the SEC East for second. The gap beneath powerful Georgia is deep, but Kentucky's there with Tennessee and Florida. Offensively for 2022, Kentucky's set to do some damage. Will Levis, who had a solid season last year, is primed to raise the level of his game at quarterback. Running back Chris Rodriguez is an All-America candidate, and he should eclipse 1,000 yards again with ease, even in the vaunted SEC. Now the Cats bite defensively, and they have a veteran unit. The linebacking core is simply outstanding. J.J. Weaver and Jaquez Jones are honors candidates. Now we doubt Kentucky's strong enough to win them all outside the loss to Georgia, but minimizing the losses will tell the tale of the year. We will go with 3 losses, thinking 4 rather than 2. But Kentucky's a very good football team and a program thanks to the unheralded job Mark Stoops has been doing. At 19, we have Ole Miss. For those anticipating the Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss experiment was going to fail, you may want to grab a 6-pack for your lawn chair and enjoy the fun. Kiffin has the Rebels rocking, and even though there are significant personnel losses, Ole Miss has reload characteristics and is ready to compete for another New Year's Six Bowl again this year. The talented Matt Corral is gone at quarterback, but Kiffin is a quarterback guru, and he loves to mold new signal callers. 4-star Luke Altmaier, who quarterbacked Ole Miss in the majority of the Sugar Bowl after Corral was knocked from the game, returns, and he had a decent spring. But Kiffin welcomed in 5-star Southern Cal transfer Jackson Dart, who is ultimately expected to win the job. The running back room suffered huge losses, but Kiffin again worked the portal in bringing in really good Zach Evans from TCU. The rising sophomore Evans, a 5-star recruit, has vast potential and ran for 1,000 yards last year for the Frogs, so expect him to thrive for the Rebels. The receiving corps is led by Jonathan Mingo, an honors candidate who had 22 catches last year. Now, the defense is not necessarily the Rebels' strong suit, and there are no surefire all-conference candidates on the team, but they will be active and they will be decent. Now, Mississippi hits the road to visit LSU and Texas A&M, where one loss seems likely. A bye week sets up a really tough run to close out. Alabama at home, at Arkansas, and a very much improved Mississippi State at home in the Egg Bowl. Folks, we see at least 4 losses for Ole Miss as the rigorous schedule, even later with potentially most issues solved, is too tough to bear. At 18, we have Tennessee. Although he was well liked within the university and community, and his success on the field was without question good, many UCF fans were cheering when Tennessee hired Josh Heupel away from the Knights. Now, while Tennessee was only 7-6 a year ago, including a wild Music City Bowl, there were some promising signs in what was seemingly an average season. Offensively, Tennessee was lit, and the catalyst of that unit returned. Hendon Hooker was firing darts when healthy, 31 touchdowns against only 3 interceptions. Imagine his encore with an additional year in the system Josh Heupel has employed. Jabari Small is back after leading the team in rushing last year. Rising junior Cedric Tillman, who is all SEC at a minimum, was ridiculous last fall, leading the team with 12 receiving touchdowns. With a healthy Hooker, Tennessee will keep the scoreboard operator busy. Now, defensively, the Vols need some improvement, having given up 29 points per game last fall, but they do have promise this year. 7 starters return, including the owner of the defensive stat sheet, outside linebacker Jeremy Banks, who recorded 128 stops and 11.5 tackles for loss. Wow! As good as Banks was, middle linebacker Aaron Beasley was stout as well, finishing second in stops. Early on, Tennessee travels to Pitt and hosts Florida. But if Tennessee is 4-0, well, we could be onto something. Really scary offense at Rocky Top, but odds favor there are at least 3 losses: Alabama, Georgia, and 1, maybe 2, somewhere else. But the future is looking bright at Rocky Top. Michigan State is 17th. Michigan State certainly appears to have hit a home run in hiring Mel Tucker over from Colorado, and the Spartans fended off several interested teams who came inquiring about Tucker over the past year. The Spartans sweetened his deal, and they love what the future looks like as Tucker continues to rebuild in East Lansing. The Spartans had a big season in 2021, going 11-2 and surprising a host of folks. But lingering in that success was an eye-opening 51-7 mauling at Ohio State. So there is work to be done. Quarterback Peyton Thorne, who has limitations but made plays when he had to in directing all those wins, he returns, and he should be improved this fall. Spartan wideout Jaden Reed, who was third team big last year, is ready to become a household name. Don't forget about Reed among the nation's top return men in the game as well. Now, 3 tough games. Home games against Ohio State, Wisconsin, and a roadie revenge game at Michigan are tough. Michigan State ends at Penn State, but otherwise the schedule is favorable. We think the best for Sparty is 2 losses, but we think 3, perhaps 4, will be more reasonable in 2022. Arkansas is 16th. There seemed to be a collective yawn when Arkansas, quote-unquote, settled on hiring Georgia offensive line coach Sam Pittman. I must admit, I thought the Hogs had superior options available, but it certainly appears that all of us were dead wrong, as Pittman has done a tremendous job, while his personality seems fitting right in there with Razorback Nation. Listen, folks, Pittman and Arkansas are tough, and they've won some big games. Just ask those Texas Aggies. Expect much of the same in 2022. On offense, sophomore sensation K.J. Jefferson is back at quarterback after an impressive season, where he had a 21-4 touchdown to interception ratio. He makes plays, even with his feet, where he added another 6 scores. While All-America receiver Treylon Burks will certainly be missed, Oklahoma transfer Jaden Hasselwood and Warren Thompson look to pick up the slack. Up front, Ricky Strongberg is an All-America candidate on the offensive line, where 3 other additional starters return. The Hogs look proficient on both sides of the ball offensively. Now on the stop side, Arkansas are short on returning starters, but got plenty of talent and experienced players. But they will stay salty. Linebacker Bumper Poole, who led the Hogs in stops in 2021, is an honors candidate at linebacker. Jason Catalon, who will be challenging for All-America honors, will patrol the secondary from his safety spot. Arkansas has a great pair of coordinators in Kendall Briles on offense and former Missouri head coach Barry Odom on defense. Good heavens. Fasten up the chin strap, folks. This is a really good football team, but even in the best case scenario, it seems like there are 3 losses due to their schedule. We'll go with 8-4 for Arkansas, but I really wouldn't want to play them. At 15th, we have the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon lost their head coach Mario Cristobal as he returned home to Miami to take over the Hurricanes. Enter Dan Lanning, who excelled as a defensive assistant with Georgia, and Lanning looks the part. With his forte on the stop sign, Lanning has to appreciate the best player on the team is returning All-America linebacker Noah Sewell, who gives the Ducks a foundation defensively on a unit returning 7 starters. Offensively, Oregon seems in transition. Bo Nix, who has shown flashes, arrives as a Tiger legacy transfer from Auburn. It will be interesting to see how Nix fits in, but he does have a relationship with new coordinator on the offensive side, Kenny Dillingham, who used to be at Auburn. There are holes at running back with the top 2 rushers having departed, but sophomore Byron Aldell appears ready to emerge. And keep your eye on Minnesota transfer Marquise Irving as well. Chris Hudson is the top returning receiver with 31 catches. Now, in a year with the new staff with differing schemes, although there's plenty of talent on hand, we think it will be tough for Oregon to challenge nationally. We see a likelihood of 3 losses, provided things go smoothly in the quarterback position is productive. We wouldn't be surprised if it was 8-4 for Oregon this year either. At 14, we have Oklahoma State. Now, last year in our annual preview, we noted that improvement was expected from sophomore quarterback Spencer Sanders, who in his freshman campaign had an unimpressive 16-11 touchdown to interception ratio. Spencer did just that, winning all Big 12 honors last year and leading the Pokes within a whisker of winning the conference championship. However, while dazzling in the run game, Sanders did throw only 20 touchdowns against 12 interceptions, which is hardly stellar. So once again, with 32 starts under his belt, that stat line would necessarily have to improve for Okie State to reach higher levels. Now, Sanders will operate behind a very good, experienced offensive line. Now, on the defensive side, Colin Oliver, a potential All-America player, leads the unit that was absolutely a terror last fall. But there are several starters to replace, and highly regarded defensive coordinator Jim Knowles left for Ohio State. But Derek Mason, former head coach at Vanderbilt and a very well-respected defensive mind, takes over. So how does the schedule stack up for the Pokes? The non-conference sets up nicely. Arizona State visits, but this seems to be a good time to catch the Devils, who have a series of issues going on at the moment. Playing at Baylor to open conference play is daunting, but we do note that the Cowboys are strong where Baylor is, which is on the line of scrimmage. Now, Texas Tech is dangerous and they visit, and Oklahoma State goes to TCU, but then they host Texas before visiting very dangerous Kansas State. Now, this is an important stretch of contests for Oklahoma State. Bedlam is on the road at Oklahoma, and that game is sandwiched between home games with Iowa State and West Virginia, both of whom are very capable football teams. So we think at least 2 losses seems right, but the Big 12 is better than most think, and the grind will be real. So we're going to go with 9-3 for Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State. At 13th, we have the Miami Hurricanes. Former Hurricane offensive lineman Mario Cristobal, who after his playing days has had a fine career in coaching, left a high-profile spot at Oregon to come home and help resurrect the Hurricane program, which has never won the ACC since entering with only one trip, that a blowout, to the ACC championship game. Cristobal has always been a fabulous recruiter and is a stellar position coach, but he was brought to Miami to win championships. One position he does not have to recruit to pay off in 2022 is at quarterback, with sophomore signal caller Tyler Van Dyke returning to guide the Canes. Van Dyke, 6'4", 224, showed flashes of brilliance last fall, closing the year with 25 touchdowns against only 6 interceptions. Miami will have the appropriate skill talent for Van Dyke to employ, and the offensive line is Cristobal's forte. Now, the Canes have some holes defensively, but there's plenty of young talent on hand. Cover corner Tyreek Stevenson, who transferred in from Georgia last year, played very well for the Canes. He led the team defensively in 2022. The secondary is strong. James Williams is a top ACC safety. Now, they have a great linebacking core, but the unit can use some detailed attention from outstanding new defensive coordinator Kevin Steele. Now, this is not an overwhelming schedule for Miami, and they could be 11-1, but we doubt they can display the level of consistency for that to occur. Odds are certainly against winning at Clemson, and there are plenty of opportunities to stumble. We'll say 9-3, but Miami, for the first time in many moons, could legitimately be back. We have the Oklahoma Sooners, 12th. Wow, the changes at Oklahoma are substantial. All ignited when Lincoln Riley bolted for Southern California. Several key players on the Sooners hit the transfer portal, with a good handful, most notably quarterback Caleb Williams, following Riley to the Trojans. So the Sooners welcomed highly regarded Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables, a former Oklahoma assistant, to head to Norman and take over the Sooners. This is Venables' first stint as a head coach, but hey man, that worked out really good for Bob Stoops. Now, the Sooner fans love Venables, so he will start his tenure with plenty of goodwill. Venables brought in Jeff Lebby as offensive coordinator, and this looks to be a really good move. The transfer portal depleted the team, but the quarterback position gained a significant transfer in former UCF signal caller Dylan Gabriel, who Lebby is familiar with from his days with the Knights. Gabriel threw touchdowns all over the place at UCF, and he could be a breakout star across the nation if things go right. Top wide receiver Marvin Mims, who was third in catches but made some big plays for OU last year, returns to be Gabriel's primary target. Oklahoma's got some holes on defense, but Venables is probably the most highly regarded defensive mind in the game, so expect that unit to improve quickly. Can Oklahoma come into the Texas State Fair 5-0? If so, they could finish 11-1. But we just think there will be too many transitional pains along the way. And we don't know exactly where they might stumble up, but we're going to go with 9-3 for Oklahoma in 2022. At 11 and winning the Big 12, we have the Baylor Bears. For those inclined to short futures on the projected win totals for the Baylor Bears in 2022, you may want to rethink that strategy. The Bears are a veteran team in the right places, the lines of scrimmage, which under Dave Aranda has exhibited a high level of physicality. This gives the Bears a big advantage. Now, Baylor possesses the strongest offensive line in the conference, led by All-America candidate tackle Connor Galvin. The schedule for the Bears is tough. After a tune-up in the opener, Baylor travels to face BYU, who's very good and is always tough physically. After a trip to Iowa State, the Bears host Oklahoma State, who they beat in the Big 12 championship game a year ago. Additional Big 12 contenders Oklahoma and Texas are both on the road. But Baylor is very well coached and strong where it counts, on the lines of scrimmage, which maximizes their style of play. Although they lack proven skill talent and face a challenging slate, we think the Bears are the slight favorite this year in the Big 12. At 10, we have the Southern California Trojans. Although it seemed on occasion that Clay Helton might get things going out at Southern Cal, a veteran team slumped out of the gate last fall and Helton was shown the door early in the campaign. After the season, USC dropped a bombshell and hired Lincoln Riley away from Oklahoma, where he has had tremendous success. Then, with the NIL raging, several Sooner players, including highly touted quarterback Caleb Williams, followed Riley out to Los Angeles. So, with all these transfer players combined with a high level of talent on hand, it would seem the Trojans are primed to make some serious noise out in the Pac-12. Williams is uber talented and experienced in running the offense Riley will employ, so we can expect the Trojans to be very proficient offensively. USC does have a green, inexperienced offensive line, so we'll need to see what happens there. Now, on the defensive side, things are not as well put together, but although only 3 starters return, there is a basis to work from. Tui Tuipulotu was a first-team all-conference player last year, and he's a terror in the middle up front. If USC has trouble with the new systems and game plans early, there are some dangerous early games, most notably at Stanford and Oregon State, and a home match with Fresno State. Those are 3 tough games. In mid-October, USC goes to Utah, and that will be a huge one and a tough one. The Trojans close at Westwood versus UCLA, and then hosting Notre Dame. If they remain healthy, it's hard to imagine USC finishing worse than, say, 8-4. However, it looks like USC will be underdogs only at Utah. So 10-2 would seem reasonable as Lincoln Riley gets things going. But make no mistake, the Trojans will be really fun to watch in 2022. At number 9, we have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. After over a decade at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly inexplicably left for the perception of greener, we mean that literally, grass at LSU. Odd in our view to say the least, but a man has got to do what a man's got to do. Formerly defensive coordinator at Cincinnati and then at Notre Dame, former Buckeye player Marcus Freeman was chosen to take the helm at this historic place. This is Freeman's first head coaching gig, but his hiring was very well received across the nation. We also like the choice. Freeman wasted no time in assembling a decent staff, and he is blistering a path of success on the recruiting trail. Now comes the main thing, winning ball games. Although Notre Dame brings back 15 starters, the Irish will need a signal caller again for the 3rd consecutive year since Ian Book departed. While that group emerges, the Irish can rely on tight end Michael Mayer, who has wide-out characteristics and is a real weapon, to show the way. Mayer is All-America in most minds and is certainly as advertised, having hauled in 71 receptions for 7 scores in 2021. Jarrett Patterson is our All-America pick at center, anchoring a line that should be pretty doggone good. Defensively, and this is Freeman's forte, the Irish will be very strong. Up front, defensive end Isaiah Foskey is outstanding. Last year's leading tackler J.D. Bertrand returns at linebacker to give the Irish leadership. At safety, Northwestern transfer Brandon Joseph enters as perhaps Notre Dame's best defensive player. He's an NFL caliber player. Cornerback Clarence Lewis, he's a pretty good one, and Cam Hart is a guy I'm watching at corner. So Jack Kaiser is back at Rover, and Houston Griffin, he's back at strong safety. The secondary is going to be very strong for Notre Dame, and they will be stout on the stop side. Now, it's going to seem that Notre Dame's going to finish about 10-2, splitting some tough games that they have. We've noted 4 of them: Ohio State, BYU, Clemson, and Southern Cal. We think they split those games 10-2 for the Fighting Irish. Number 8, we have the Clemson Tigers. Expected to be a playoff team as usual, the performance of the Clemson Tigers last year was quite intriguing and potentially eye-opening, seemingly leaving the Tigers at somewhat of a crossroads. Now, to be fair, injuries really hampered Clemson last year, but the issues really centered around an offensive lack of potency. Quarterback DJ Uiagalelei could not work off his excellent freshman season, and he turned in a subpar performance which raised real questions. Although Clemson did smash a decent South Carolina squad to close out the regular season, they had trouble moving the ball all season and barely won several games that they pulled out in large measure to their stingy defensive unit. So will Clemson get it back together and reclaim their ACC dominance? Or were those issues we saw last year forecasting the future? I'm not sure if anyone is quite sure. Now, it seems the defense will once again be the strength of the football team, with potential All-America players and defensive end Miles Murphy, defensive tackle Brian Breesy, and outside linebacker Trenton Simpson. Keep in mind that defensive coordinator Brent Venables has left Clemson, is now the head coach at Oklahoma. Now, offensive coordinator Tony Elliott, he is the new head coach at Virginia, so there's some work to do offensively. DJ Uiagalelei is going to have to elevate his game, mentally included, to retain his quarterback spot. He is capable, but should questions arise, a large portion of the Tiger faithful will be calling for 5-star freshman Cade Klubnik, who was impressive in the spring, with folks touting his accuracy. Now, Will Shipley is an honors candidate at running back, always a threat when he gets the ball. There are outstanding wide receivers on the team, and up front, the Tigers are strong, with a couple of honors candidates in Jordan McFadden and Will Putnam. So while the defense appears solid, the offense needs to step it up big time if Clemson has playoff hopes. And with new coordinators on both sides of the ball, there seems little wiggle room for Dabo Swinney. Now, Clemson could win them all and make all the doubters look foolish, but they do not have the overall talent and consistency, particularly on offense, not to mention with a pair of new coordinators to get that done. So we're going to think about 10-2, maybe even 9-3 with Clemson. Their game against NC State is a big one. At number 7, we have North Carolina State. Just a few seasons ago, it appeared North Carolina State was treading water under head coach Dave Doeren, with some speculating about his future. We wondered if internally measurable progress was being made, as we really did not see it materializing on the gridiron. However, coming out of COVID, we have seen strong signs of the Wolfpack resurgence. NC State, with a favorable schedule and a veteran team returning, is no stretch to strongly be considered a favorite for the Atlantic Coast Conference. Talented and versatile dual threat QB Devin Leary returns to direct the offense, and he will be challenging for conference, if not national, honors. Leary threw for over 3,400 yards and 35 touchdowns in 21. Keeping Leary healthy is important, but the Wolfpack offensive line will be good with 3 starters returning. The defense for the Wolfpack appears salty, the kind of unit that could be the difference. The unit is led by a pair of national honors candidates at linebacker, Peyton Wilson on the inside and Drake Thomas on the outside. All ACC is just the beginning for these two. The schedule is favorable, with non-con games at East Carolina and at home against Texas Tech. But the season appears to be on the line when the North Carolina State Wolfpack head on the road to Death Valley to play Clemson. Now, NC State had Clemson beat there a couple years ago, but missed a chip shot field goal and then lost in overtime. But the Pack did beat the Tigers in Raleigh last year. They can win at Clemson this year. If they do, from there, the Wolfpack are perhaps favored the rest of the way, with the toughest games at home versus Virginia Tech and Wake Forest, before closing on the road against North Carolina in the rivalry. We find it against the odds for them to run the table, and it seems they are a good candidate to stub their toes somewhere. But look out, they could be undefeated, although we are going to go with 10-2 for North Carolina State in 2022. Texas A&M is 6th. The powers that be in College Station hired Jimbo Fisher away from Florida State to bring Texas A&M to the level of Alabama and compete for national championships. The Aggies beat a visiting Crimson Tide last year, but somehow only finished the season 8-4, losing their final game at LSU. This is not why Fisher was paid $75 million in a record hire. So folks are getting a bit fidgety with Fisher 34-14 in his 4-year tenure there in Aggie land. You bet Jimbo Fisher is a quarterback guru and a well-respected offensive mind, but when we think of this group from Aggieland this year, we're compelled to reflect back to the old days of the Wrecking Crew. This defensive group is just that salty, with former Maryland head coach DJ Durkin the coordinator. The secondary leads the unit, and we can start talking about the secondary with safety Antonio Johnson, an All-America candidate and the team's leading returning tackler. Now, A&M needs a quarterback, and transferring in from LSU is Max Johnson, who has FSU ties with Fisher through his dad, Brad Johnson. Johnson could excel under Fisher's tutelage. Running back Devin Arcane shined as a freshman and looks ready to challenge for conference, if not national honors. Keep your eye on that young man. Anita Smith is a potential All-America player at wide receiver. The line is strong, with returning starters guard Layden Robinson and center Bryce Foster leading the way. Both of them are honors candidates. This is a strong team, but can the Aggies reach the pinnacle? Folks, we think A&M is quite good, but the slate portends 1, if not 2 losses, and Alabama is waiting with revenge on the mind. We have Michigan 5th. With almost everyone but the most faithful Michigan man having given up on the Wolverines, knocking off mighty Ohio State and winning the Big Ten Conference. All the pieces of the puzzle came together for a special season, and Michigan smashed Ohio State going away, then thumped Iowa to win the Big Ten and secure a spot in the college football playoff. Even though the Wolverines were dominated in the semifinal by eventual national champion Georgia, Michigan made the leap, and the faithful were thrilled. Now, Jim Harbaugh returns after flirting with the NFL, although both coordinators do not. Now, offensively, Michigan won't miss a beat. 2 outstanding quarterbacks give Michigan plenty of offensive opportunities. Cade McNamara is the projected starter. He's coming off a stellar campaign with over 2,500 yards passing and 15 touchdowns. J.J. McCarthy, who we have already seen make big plays in his arsenal, he is back. Michigan is quite comfortable with either or both. Now, Blake Corum is outstanding, and he ran for just under 1,000 yards last year, and he returns ready to rock. But most of the Michigan folks got their eye on super sophomore Donovan Edwards. Now, the receiving core is really explosive. It's on the defensive side where some of the deficiencies are for 2022, which is expectable after losing Heisman finalist edge rusher Adrian Hutchinson to the Detroit Lions, among others they lost. Now, up front, we like the starters. Mazi Smith is highly regarded. Chris Jenkins and Mike Morris have big potential. Junior Colson, an all-big player, he returns anchoring the linebacker core. Now, Michigan's got quite a favorable schedule. There appear to be 7 somewhat easy wins. Make it 8, as we think they revenge a loss to Sparty from last year, who comes to Ann Arbor. An early road tilt at Iowa in Week 5 kind of looms large. Iowa plays well at home, particularly at night. Penn State and Nebraska come to the Big House, and Michigan will be favored by over a touchdown over both of those. Then there is the road finale at the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes are very, very powerful in 2022. 11-1 looks like the best bet for Michigan, but then you could always wonder if Michigan is going to revert back to their old ways. So we'll go with 10-2. But this is a very good Michigan team to be sure. Coming in at 4, we have the Utah Utes. For 2022, Utah is a veteran football team with 14 returning starters that is a dark horse candidate to make the college football playoff. They served you notice by pummeling Oregon twice to close a regular season before losing a sizable lead with quarterback Cameron Rising knocked out of the game and losing a close Rose Bowl to powerful Ohio State. Now, Utah has an honors candidate with Rising, who took over after the Utes stumbled out of the gate last year at 1-2, and he closed the season strong. He completed 64% of his throws with 20 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He can run as well. Now, defensively, Utah lost their most phenomenal linebacker, Devin Lloyd, but although only 4 starters returned of the top 10 tacklers last year, they are still stout. Mohamed Diabate transfers in after starring at Florida, and he's going to assume Lloyd's linebacker position. Now, the unit has quite a few settling pieces, but the talent is certainly there. Now, Utah starts the season at Florida, so they better have their chin strap fashioned. The swamp will be hot, and physical conditioning will be critical. We doubt that if Utah remains healthy, that they would be an underdog anywhere on their schedule. Now, historically, they're going to stumble somewhere, but they could be a playoff team. They could run the table undefeated and be in the playoffs. So, folks, be advised. This is a very good football team. Our preseason third place pick is the 2021 national champion Georgia Bulldogs. Now, Georgia solved some early issues on offense last year at quarterback and receiver, and they rode a nasty defensive unit to avenge a loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game and win their first national championship since 1980, when Herschel Walker was running around. It was a great year for Dog Nation. Okay, so much of that defensive unit is now in the National Football League, but the Dogs will still bite you. There are only 3 returning starters on the stop side, but that included a group of stars on each level. Defensive tackle Jalen Carter, linebacker Nolan Smith, and safety Keely Ringo, all potential honors candidate defenders. Now, offensively, there's quite a bit to like. Stetson Bennett, who continues to play very well, is back at quarterback. He completed 65% of his throws with 29 touchdowns last year against stellar competition. He played very well in the college football final, so he will be outstanding. Tight end Brock Bowers, our first-team All-America tight end, also returns. He had 13 scores, giving opposing defensive coordinators fits. Guard Warren Erickson is an honors candidate, and he leads a good offensive line. Now, favored in every game, Georgia should march to the SEC championship game undefeated to see probably Alabama again and try to reach the pinnacle of the college football playoff for the second straight year. We do like the Bulldogs again. Number 2 in the nation is the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, it was not the strongest season by Ohio State Buckeye standards in 2021, but there were plenty of positives that appear likely to set the groundwork for a potential championship run here in 2022. Quarterback C.J. Stroud had some issues out of the gate in 21, but he finished strong, ending the season as a Heisman finalist. Stroud threw for over 4,400 yards while completing 70% of his throws, with 44 touchdowns against only 6 interceptions. Good heavens. Now, Stroud will probably elevate his game, given the talent on hand. Therefore, please consider him a Heisman candidate favorite once again. Now, at running back, talented Travion Henderson, who ran for over 1,200 yards as a freshman last year, enters as a national honors finalist this year. Now, Ohio State has perhaps the nation's top group of receivers, led by consensus preseason All-America player Jackson Smith-Njigba, who led the Buckeyes in receiving in 2021 and had himself some kind of day at the Rose Bowl. I'm sure you saw that like I did. Good heavens. Now, the offensive line is outstanding, led by Paris Johnson. Expect the offense to score plenty. Good grief, it's going to be just proficient as it can be. Defensively, the group has a chance to be strong as 9 of the top 10 tacklers in 2021 return. Additionally, Jim Knowles comes over from Oklahoma State to take over the defensive unit. Zach Harrison, an All-America candidate at defensive end, leads the unit up front. Now, folks, if Ohio State can get by Notre Dame early, and we think they do, the Buckeyes should be undefeated hosting Michigan, who will be good once again, but a decisive underdog in Columbus. With the offensive output expected, along with an improved defensive unit, we expect Ohio State to run the table, beating the West entrant in the Big Ten title game and securing a spot in the playoff. They will be very, very strong in 2022. Our 2022 national champion pick is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, we really need to take a moment and appreciate the historic run Alabama has been on over the last decade or so. Few teams post-World War II have had similar runs, so cheers to Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. Expect this dominance to continue in 2022. Last year, Bama was young on offense and lost to Texas A&M before squeaking by Auburn before upsetting Georgia in the SEC championship game. But the Dogs bit back in the CFP championship game to win the national championship. But Alabama is our preseason number 1 team here in 2022 behind a veteran team of 5-star players, including what we consider to be the best players in the nation on both sides of the ball in quarterback Bryce Young and linebacker Will Anderson. Alabama grew up on offense down the stretch behind Young, who emerged to win the Heisman Trophy. Young is poised to continue to elevate his game, and he will have plenty of weapons to utilize. Enter Jahmyr Gibbs, an electric and versatile running back who we expect fireworks from as he transfers in from Georgia Tech. At wideout, Georgia transferred Jermaine Burton as a national honors candidate, but the experience depth behind him is thin. Now, Louisville transfer Tyler Harrell will jump in and be a key contributor, and tight end Cameron Latou, the leading receiver, returning with 26 catches, is among the conference's best at his position. Now, All-America candidate Emil Ekiyor anchors the offensive line, but the rest of the unit is work in progress. But don't worry, this is Alabama. Defensively, Alabama will be extremely challenging for opposing offensive coordinators. Linebacker Will Anderson is as good a player on the stop side as we have seen in a decade or so. Don't count him out for the Heisman Trophy, I'm telling you. Henry TuoTuo is an All-America candidate at linebacker, and rising sophomore Dallas Turner could be the next superstar on the Crimson Tide defense. Now, although the slate is rough, we think Bama makes it and lands in the SEC championship game undefeated to face Georgia once again. The Crimson Tide, we think, comes out victorious, goes to the playoff to meet Ohio State, and we think they pull it out and become your 2022 national champion. Well, folks, there you have it. Alabama is our pick to win it all, and we're not alone. They are a consensus choice among among all the prognosticators that we've seen. Now, for a more detailed written analysis, we will put a link in the description to take you to a page where we have that more detailed analysis. Please drop us some comments with your thoughts on our rankings. Let us know where we got it right and where we may be off base. What you think. We'd like to hear from you. Now, usually a team projected in the top 10 folds like a balsa wood chair, and somebody nobody thought of rises up to be heard from. Who are those teams? Do you see anybody out there you'd let us know about? So we would invite you to like the video for us and subscribe to our page if you're so inclined. And we appreciate you watching. We can't wait for kickoff. Appreciate you taking the time out with us today. Well, Nelly, we'll see you when they kick it off.